So the new GTP9 arrived at the store late last year and I've been meaning to give it a review, but unfortunately it's kind of been sitting on the back burner. At SHOT Show 2019, G&G announced the SMC9, which is a carbine kit built specifically for this gun. And if everything lines up, we might just be getting a sneak preview of the carbine kit direct from G&G, so that's pretty exciting. So I figured it's a good opportunity to take the GTP9 off the back burner and cook up a review. Along with that carbine kit, they've also announced a few different variants of the GTP9, along with extended and even a drum mag. So it looks poised to be G&G's new flagship gas blowback. Let's take a look. As far as I know, the GTP9 isn't based on a real gun, though it's pretty easy to see the influence of other pistols. The slide feels reminiscent of the Smith & Wesson M&P. The grip texture, along with that mag release, reminds me of a USP. And of course, the trigger guard and the trigger itself, I'm pretty sure you already know. Of course, even real gun brands are guilty of borrowing good ideas, and as a whole, in the hands, it does feel like its own pistol. I quite like the look actually. It's bold and futuristic, but at the same time bridges that gap between sci-fi and reality. It looks like something straight out of Apex Legends. Yeah, I've been playing it too. The gun is presented in a custom fit hard case, which is similar to the GPM92 we've reviewed in the past. It protects the gun really well and is definitely great to see included. It has room for one extra mag, replacement grip backstrap, and a speed loader. You also get this GTP9 PVC patch, which we've seen with the newer G&Gs and I think is a great little touch. The included speed loader isn't really the afterthought that I thought it would be. It's actually one of the nicer speed loaders we've ever seen, with a really nice thick plastic construction and a super beefy spring. Most players I know have broken more than a few of the standard ones, and this is definitely an upgrade. The included manual is up to G&G's usual standard with nice color photos specific to the GTP9, and I'm glad to see that there is an exploded parts diagram at the end. Back to the gun itself, I was a little disappointed to find that the slide is polymer, but as I've said before, G&G has gotten pretty good at making polymer. It's by no means fragile or weak, and it has that same sort of rougher texture that fits in really well with the rest of G&G's lineup. Along with that metal barrel, it does sound surprisingly good when you rack the slide, although it doesn't do quite so well in the shake test. Along with that magazine, it tips our scales at 770 grams, which is a decent amount more than the metal Umarex Glock 17. Of course, most of the weight is towards the rear, so it's very pointable, but slightly off balance. Looking at build quality, the controls are excellent. The action is really crisp, and it's really a joy to fondle with. In particular, I love how the magazine clicks solidly into place. It's worth noting that the slide and the mag release are completely ambidextrous and feel identical no matter which hand you're using. The safety is a cross-bolt trigger safety, more commonly found on shotguns rather than pistols, but it's a very simple design that works quite well. Along with that red accent, I really think that safety actually brings together this whole pistol, and I quite like the look. There's even a side indicator, which is a nice touch. Slide play is great at the back, but a little less than stellar at the front. Barrel play is about average, but the chamber is held in very tight. We'll see if this all affects accuracy in a little bit. Speaking of the barrel, I was pleased to see a threaded barrel out of the box, but a little less pleased to find that it's 12mm and not the standard 14. It appears to be purpose-built for the G&G pistol tracer. As I mentioned before, the grip has a very similar texture to the USP, which I just love. Very, very grippy at the front and back, and it feels great to hold. Despite the grip being quite tall, it is a little on the smaller side. And it does come with included larger back straps, but it doesn't really solve the biggest issue. You see, the distance between the back of the grip and the trigger is a little bit shorter than on most pistols. When I naturally grip the pistol, my trigger finger actually rests on the finger joint, not the fingertip as it should. I actually have to pull my finger out of the trigger guard for a proper trigger pull, and it feels a little bit awkward. This could be fixed by making the back straps a little bit taller like on the PX4. But that's not my only gripe with the trigger. First off, there's quite a bit of play side to side which you really feel during the pull. Then there is the issue of the trigger safety. It's actually stiffer than the take-up of the trigger, meaning for most of the trigger pull, all you feel is that thin edge of the safety, which doesn't feel good. Once you hit the wall, then the safety closes, which makes the brake feel sloppier than it actually is. The brake itself is actually quite clean and right at the end of travel. The reset is right at the wall with a nice click, but not that much feedback. Fix that side-to-side play and maybe even remove that trigger safety altogether, and this would be a great trigger. As it stands though, it's definitely the Achilles heel of this pistol. Looking at those iron sights, it's definitely in line with the whole sci-fi aesthetic. You line up the white notches to make a solid horizontal bar, which is pretty straightforward. The open rear sight does make it easier to find the front sight, but instinctively, I always want to line up the front sight with the bottom edge of the rear sight. It takes a bit of adjustment to get used to, but once you're dialed in, the smaller notches actually make this sight really good for precision shooting. Diving into the internals, check out how this gun field strips. Mag out and then pull this little tab. The slide moves forward, ready to slide off the frame. It's effortless and actually has a great sound to it too. Inside, it's a simple and clean design, but many of the parts do appear to be proprietary. Now is a good chance to show you the hop-up because it is quite unique. Think of this entire piece as the hop-up arm. As this front end is rotated, the hop-up arm moves back, pushing the rubber down the more it's moved back. So how do you adjust it without field stripping the gun? Well, I'm glad you asked. On the bottom of the grip panel, there's a little hop-up adjustment tool. This is like an itty-bitty little magazine, which is just adorable. Stick it into the barrel, gun unloaded of course, and you can turn the adjustment piece. Good news is even if you lose one, the other grip panel has one as well. I'm not sure exactly what this new hop-up offers, but it does offer a much finer adjustment than most hop-up systems. The magazine is specific to the GTP9 and actually has a metal feed lip. Sure, it might be more durable for drops, and yes, it is replaceable, but I'd be worried about ripping up mag pouches. The magazine follower locks at the bottom, which is pretty handy, but I wish they had a cutout so you could load in BBs from the bottom instead of just at the top. Capacity is 21 shots with one in the chamber. Onto the range now. Velocity starts off at 315 and manages to stay in that range for the first 10 shots. At the end of the first mag, we're still over 300 feet per second. Only at about the 30 shot mark do we see velocity taper off. Overall consistency is really quite good for a gas pistol. All said and done, it manages 61 shots from one gas fill, which is really pretty impressive. Yes, I'm firing slow, but it's safe to expect 2 mags from one fill. Shooting some targets now, aside from those minor gripes that I mentioned before, the ergonomics are pretty spot on. The angle is familiar and all the controls take no time to get used to. The sights will definitely take the most adjustment, but like I said, they are very capable sights. Stock out of the box, this is actually one of the most accurate pistols we've seen, and I wonder if it's because of the new hop-up design. Despite what I said about the trigger, it's still very usable, but it's kind of like a sports car with too much steering assist. It'll get the job done, but with a bit of tweaking, it could be that much better. As far as blowback, it's pretty comparable with a plastic slide TM, which of course is a pretty good thing. Don't expect a hard kick, but it's not weak by any means, and has a great sound to it as well. All in all, it's a fun gun to shoot on the range. It feels familiar, but fresh at the same time. And there you have it, an in-depth look at the all-new GTP9. Now, in the past, a couple brands have made their own pistol designs, and they've always been somewhat of a letdown. Now, I did have my doubts with this one, but at the end of the day, I do think G&G has a pretty solid design on their hands. Once things like holsters and part support is handled with, I'd have no problems recommending this to the players who want something a little bit different. I'd love to know what you guys think of this pistol. Let us know down below. As always, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll catch you on the next one.